People talk about yoga having evolved over the years. What's your take on the relevance of traditional yoga in our world today?
I think that's a really interesting question, Verity, because there is this kind of line, and I think it is a line, that exists today that somehow yoga has evolved. It's become more than what it was. And what I have seen through my studies is that that's not necessarily the case. The way it's been articulated may have changed. The language around it may have changed to deliver it in a way that's more relevant, perhaps in some ways today. But I think the essential qualities of yoga have been present for literally thousands and thousands of years. As I mentioned before, I love art. And so I've studied the iconography, the art of yoga. And what I found is that dating back 7,000 years ago, so it would make it contemporary, it definitely would be traditional. Dating back 7,000 years ago, the symbols that are used to represent yoga back then are as relevant then as they are now. And in fact, unless you actually understand what those symbols mean, you'd look at them and think that it has nothing to do with anything. What I'm saying is that there was a culture that existed 6,000 or 7,000 years ago where all of the essential, fundamental, and even more advanced teachings and practices of yoga were widely known by the general community, not just the way today yoga is known on the surface. People know everything, a lot about asana, but very little about the other facets of yoga. In that culture, 7,000 years ago, most people had a profound and a direct relationship with the yogic tradition. And I think that's incredible. So in some ways, I think they were more evolved then than we are now. And I know particular schools of yoga or styles of yoga like to think that what they are offering is somehow more evolved than what was offered before. What I can say is that there's more of it today. I recently saw a book that's called 2,100 Asanas. Well, traditionally there were 84 asanas in Hatha Yoga Pradipika. They talk about 84 traditional asanas. And today we have variations, takeoffs on takeoffs on takeoffs on takeoffs, and they call them new asanas. But what are they actually doing? Are they bringing more benefit than those original 84? In fact, the first asanas and the original asanas were predominantly seated asanas, not standing. So the development of standing postures is relatively new. Why weren't they focused on so much before? Because asana was understood traditionally to be one of the means by which one prepares the mind, one purifies the mind, one begins to alter one's state of mind so that one can do the essential practice of yoga, the heart of all yoga practice, which is meditation. That's the essence, the kernel, the core of all yoga practice is real meditation. Meditation is a process by which we separate, remove, separate, V yoga, to separate that which is not essential from the essential. So we know what the essential is, and then we can bring the essential to everything else so that it becomes conveyed through everything else. But if we don't know what the essential is, we're always living from a tangent, from a vector, from the periphery, without ever really knowing the true heart or the center, which is a kind of potency. So the purpose of asana is to facilitate that. And the asanas that most facilitate that are the seated asanas. Now, in the yogic tradition, there are different levels of practice. There's the first level, which is to help release tension. There's the intermediate level, which is to revivify, to bring about a very high degree of vitality and well-being. And the third level, which is called yoga mastery or asana, postural siddhi, siddhi means perfection or mastery, is to be able to sustain an asana, a posture for many hours rather than moving through a vinyasa series very quickly of a whole lot of different asanas, to have the capacity to sustain one asana for an extended period of time. Because when you're able to do that, and that requires a lot of different capacities, including clarity of mind and strength of mind and focus. When one can sustain asana for a long period of time, it becomes a meditation posture. So I don't really think that asana or yoga has evolved. I think yoga asana has changed to incorporate many other potentialities, but I don't think it's necessarily enhanced or deepened the experience of yoga. And I think that that was evident at its very core, at its very inception, 7,000, 8,000 years ago. You can see it right there if you can